Three, two, one. Hey guys, this is Dean Tedder with the Two Party Podcast, and I'm on here with Emily Lopez, and she's the broker and owner of High Country Realty. She runs a new podcast called My House Podcast, which we're going to talk about and touch on a little bit. She also is owner of Lopez Construction, which, and if I'm not mistaken, Emily, you are in Wyoming?
Yes.
Okay, so she's in Rock Springs, Wyoming. And again, I encourage the audience to go check out her podcast, My House Podcast. And if you're in Wyoming, obviously, and you need some construction work done, go do that. Reach out to her for realty help as well. Emily, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, a little bit about your background so the audience can get to know you a little bit.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time. I know from talking to you, you're pumping a lot of these out. So I know you're working hard. Hustling. I like it.
Yeah.
So I started in real estate, I guess you would say. I started in rental property. So when I was 17, I was in an AP calculus class, and I've always had to work really hard. I wasn't super smart in school, but I always worked really hard. Mm-hmm. So I had a calculus teacher who, him and his wife had several rental properties. They invested in them together, and they also invested in them with some of his family members separate from that. So they had a couple trailer courts. I know trailer courts with bigger pockets are like the cool thing now. They weren't cool back then,
right?
But they had a couple trailer courts. They had multi-unit properties. They had single family properties. And I just thought, I'm making $10 an hour in high school. This is a great job. But he just said one day, you work really hard. Do you want a job? And I was like, yeah. And so I went to work that night with him and his wife in one of their trailer courts. The sewer had backed up under the entire trailer court because people were dumping grease into their drains. Here's the thing. People think if they dump grease down their drains with hot water, it separates it.
It makes it worse.
In the sewer, it finds the other grease and it creates these balls that never could have fit through themselves. And there's just balls this big of grease. So they had the sewage hatch opened up for the trailer court. They'd had to call the engineer that had planned it out because they had to get like a huge snake to snake out the drain. It wasn't, obviously it was a whole court. So they had like all these people there, they're working on it. Me and this teacher that I had, his name was Dave. He's been just like a mentor to me in real estate. We're in waders in this sewer hatch on a ladder. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like,
yeah.
And he looks at me, he goes, kid, he always called me kid. You're not getting paid enough for this. Get out of here. So
right?
but this was my first experience in rental property. So I worked for them for like 7 years. I worked with them all through high school, through college. When I went to school, I went to a different town. I went to the University of Wyoming in Laramie, and I did my bachelor's and master's degree there. But in the summers and breaks, I'd always come back and work for them. Yeah. So at the end of when I was doing my master's degree, me and my husband were just getting married. So literally we were under contract, and like the day after or a couple days after we got married, we closed on our first rental property.
Nice.
Working through them, I just saw that it was a really good investment. It was something that I wanted to do as I got older. I had the opportunity they would build houses. That's where I kind of learned everything, did repairs and maintenance on the property. They would build some nicer, higher end homes. I got to work on those with them and just kind of learned as I went with someone who is very patient. And I think anybody that invests in rental property kind of knows, a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So I got a tile.
You kind of have to, yeah.
Yeah. And in our town, unfortunately, we're a really small town. There's about 25,000 people here. We have a town maybe like 12 miles away that has, I would say, maybe 15,000 people. There's not a lot of good contractors. And so the thing I found is I had to be able to do everything myself.
Yep.
When you're getting into investing, you can't afford to pay people to do anything.
Yeah. And that's your bottom line. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to keep your costs low. And in order to do so, sometimes you got to do the work yourself.
Yeah. And once I got going, so when we bought the building for our real estate brokerage, we had done we always bought and hold. So we bought rental properties, fixed them up, held on to them. And I always did everything myself, unless it was, something where I could call a plumber because I'm out of town, or, an electrician. But in general, I just did everything. And so when we renovated our office, we bought a building in downtown of Rock Springs. And it just was complete. We gutted everything. I mean, replumbed, rewired, re-roofed, moved walls. It had been the same for 40 years. No one had touched it. And I thought, I'm going to hire people because it's going to make this go faster. Well, unfortunately,
It ends up being a headache.
well, they didn't come with, so I had a good electrician,
Yeah.
I had a good plumber, and I had a good, my roof was easy, but like everything and great drywall. There's this drywall company in town that's amazing. 1,800 square feet, like 12-foot ceilings. They did it in like 8 or 9 days. It was amazing. They were fast, but I had a horrendous experience with an HVAC company. So we had salvaged what we could from the floors and the bathrooms because we put tile down and then patched in where we had moved the walls so we could have the original floors in this building. So I spent so much time doing that. We had this HVAC company that we hired come in and relocate all our vents, do everything. Horrendous job. The vents were huge, like bigger than the cutout should be. They put them so close to the walls, I can't even install trim. So I've just had no trim because I'm like, okay, do I cut it and kind of be chintzy? And so I called the owner and I said, hey, I don't know how you can make this right because we just refinished all these floors and we don't have any more of this floor, but I want you to come back and see what your employees did because this is ridiculous. If this was my business, I would want to know. And I had pictures. I mean, the ductwork in the basement was like crooked and taped together and falling apart. It was horrendous.
That's horrible.
So bad. He scheduled, I can't remember because it was a couple years ago. It was either 3 or 5 appointments with me that he didn't show up for and he canceled at the last minute. And finally, I just said, I paid you the deposit. I now have bids from other contractors to redo this. And this was when we were starting out. We had invested so much money into this building and buying this business. I said, I'm either going to send you to small claims court or you just keep what I've paid you for the first half. I'm not paying you the second half because I have to have this redone. I've tried to schedule with you so many times and you keep blowing me off. And he just never responded and never came. That business has changed its name 4 or 5 times. I can't remember. They're still in town. They just keep changing their name.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Which of course, right? Now I have a great HVAC person. I had someone come and redo it all for me. But that sucks when you're starting a business because HVAC's not something I know, but man, that extra couple $1,000s to have somebody redo that is a big deal when you're starting,
Well, yeah. And there's standards. I mean, there's standards, like you said, having vents up against walls. I mean, there's a standard 2 to 3 inch rule. I mean, most HVAC, again, I'm not a certified HVAC guy, but I've been in construction 27 years. I know the standards. I've done ground up builds, commercial and residential. I've worked in some of the power plants around the nation. Like I've done enough in construction to know that every HVAC, plumbing, it all has a standard. There's a code. There's a reason why things are done. You don't put vents up against walls. They're supposed to be backed off walls for reasons, not just for trim, but there's functional reasons for it. That's crazy.
And I noticed. So like part of the way through the job, the guys left and I said, I'm changing the lock. I don't want you coming back in here. I'm trying to get a hold of your boss. And that's where then he just kept blowing me off and wouldn't come in and stuff. And it was like, you just knew once you saw their cuts and what they were doing that it wasn't right. But it was, I was just appalled. I think, but back to that, the point was contractors in this town, there's a couple that we found over the years that are really reliable, but that's why I actually in real estate got my construction license because I had been doing this stuff for myself for years. And I kept seeing people get ripped off and have these horrible experiences because in Rock Springs, Wyoming, licensed and insured, the consumer thinks that means something. And most states, you have to take tests, you have to, certain trades, you have to prove years of, apprenticeships. In Rock Springs, unless you're like an electrician where it's mandated by the state, anybody can go and get contractor's insurance and start even plumbing and start a business and say, I'm licensed and insured. That's it. You pay $125 to the city, you get your insurance, and you don't have to prove that you have any experience or training or anything. So I was seeing people when I was new in real estate sales paying to have things done, and there's really no repercussion for them when someone does a really bad job. Okay, now I have to buy these materials again because I have to tear out what they did. It's so bad. And it was super, super sad. So that's when I got into construction. And when I was new into real estate, it was nice to have the other income because it's hard to get started in real estate and build up your clientele. Now I don't really have the time for it. I will do it. Obviously I do my own properties. I do it in the event of someone comes to me and they just got burned really bad by someone else and they need help to make something right. Or for some of my existing clients with property management that live out of state. But I really like to stay away from it just because I don't have the time and I'm a one-man show. I mean, I don't have anybody to help me.
Yeah. And it's, here's the thing, you touched on a really good point, and I talk about this a lot. I even talk about this with my clients, and I have for years. I've always considered myself in construction to be pretty much the most transparent contractor out there, because I will tell a client the biggest nightmare, whether it's created by guys on the job, my subs, or if it's created by something we're running into. I am the most transparent. I tell them the cost. I tell them what it's going to be. I tell them how big of a disaster it can turn into. And I feel like that's what you should do for your clients. I've always felt that way. I don't want to get into a project and know okay, if I tear this wall out, what could be behind it could cost them $5,000, and then just go ahead and do it without telling them. Mm-hmm. I try to be very transparent. And you make a very good point. Okay. So when I was I'm basically from Florida. I consider Florida my home. Florida has next to probably New York, Florida honestly has one of the most strict and governed and regulated construction trade period. To be a general contractor they all should. To be a general contractor in Florida will cost you over $1 million to just become a licensed contractor. You got to, not just the testing, not just the studying. They don't take you in on experience. They just will not. You have to go through the school and testing. There is no doubt about it. The insurance, workman's comp, all that has to be in place. You have to get your general liability. You can't just you can work as a sub, but you can't just be a sub without being certified and tested through the state. It is so hard, even for tile. Let me put it this way. When I left Florida in 2013, they were, and they still are, arresting anyone with the name handyman. They arrest you and take you to jail. You're not allowed to operate as a handyman. If you post an ad on Craigslist that says, I want to come install carpet, I'm a handyman, I do stuff around your house, they will come, they will talk to you. And if you don't show license, workman's comp, and insurance, they arrest you. That's it. You cannot work in Florida. And if you do, I mean, there's guys getting around it. I know a lot of guys down there that they're struggling because they don't have experience. They don't have the money. They didn't go to school. They just want work, and they do know how to work and labor, but they're just not a qualified person to be running a company. Wyoming. Exactly. And so unfortunately, when I moved here in 2014, and I got back into construction again, started Time Warp Delivery, my business. And what I found here is exactly what you just said. The only thing that has to be licensed in the state of Oklahoma is HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. That is it. Anybody and everybody is all over the place in this state building the crappiest stuff I've ever seen in my life. They advertise as licensed and insured. There is no license. Oklahoma does not offer a contractor's license. There isn't one. You can't even get one because there's not one. It's only for those three trades. It's trade license. And so these people just go, they get a general liability certificate, they pay for the policy to start, they get the certificate, they send it to anybody that they want to work with, and then they cancel the policy. Yeah, so they're not even insured. They just have the certificate, a copy of it to show people and their customers, like, look, I'm insured, and then they cancel the policy and they don't pay it. And that's what we're finding now. And another reason, we discussed this a little bit before the show, another reason I'm kind of at this 7-year itch. I've always been good with business and knowing, kind of getting a vibe of when market trend in businesses are changing. When I ran my landscape businesses and I was in Florida as a youngster, I would build them up and I'd see the market change and I'd sell off. And I started doing that when it wasn't because of competition. It was because I would see a lot of people coming in the game. Next thing you know, you'd see guys push mowing lawns for nothing. And it just drives down the prices. And so I would sell. I'd build the company up, say, okay, this is a good time to sell. And I'd sell it to somebody. And I did that with computer business. When I got into the computer business, I saw where tablets, when tablets and iPhones came out, I was like very intuitive to that's going to change where we're not going to be getting repairs anymore. People aren't going to pay us to repair it when they can very cheaply go buy a new one. And I saw that and I sold it to my partner. I had a retired police officer in Tampa who he was retired, just wanted to be left alone. He was a grumpy old man and he wanted to just work on computers. And I told him, I said, look, I'm going to close the shop because I see a change in the market and I don't think we're going to be fixing many computers. And I just don't want to lose money. He goes, I'm not going back out of retirement, sell the business to me. And I said, okay, perfect timing. Got out of that. And what I'm seeing now is, again, that 7-year itch is because I'm seeing that trend in construction here in Oklahoma. Now you have a handyman or a contractor on every single corner taking work for dirt cheap and doing crappy work.
Yeah.
And so I don't like being in industries where that happens. And so when I see that, I tend to back out of those markets or I tend to build up and sell. And that's what I'm seeing here because of, like you said, there's just no qualified. The ones that are qualified are guys that probably worked under their parents or a father, or maybe through high school they did some construction, and because they did, they patched a hole in a wall, or they replaced a spigot on a house, they think that they are full-blown construction guys.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, they don't know the material, they don't know what they're supposed to be using. It's scary. It's really scary. And I've never had, since we had Time Warp Construction here, I've never had a customer ever not pay us. I've never had to have a recall. Like, I've never had a client call me and be like, it's been we've been 6 years operating here. I've never in 6 years had anybody call me back and say, you remember that remodel you did in the bathroom, blah, 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 blah. Something's wrong, or this needs to be changed, or nothing. We've never, because I provide a level of service. Before I get my final check, I walk through with the client. I make sure not only are they happy, but I show them everything that could go wrong before I walk off that job. So that way, when something should go wrong or does go wrong, and they want to call and be like, hey, da 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 da, what you guys did is wrong, or this pipe broke, or this and that. I know when I left initially and left the job and we received our final check, that we walked that job. We knew what was good, bad, and ugly. And I also go over what could potentially be any fault in the job. And usually, like I said, 6 years, I've not had any callbacks on my plumbing subs, on my electrical subs, on HVAC, any work. And I as much as we're a big enough company where I don't have to really do the work myself, I do a lot of it myself. I'm hands-on every job. The client will always see me on their job consistently. And so even my work, I've never had callbacks. It's just one of those things. I take pride in my work. We keep our general liability insurance. I have enough experience. If it's something that's above my pay grade, or something that's a big enough project, I know to hand it off to another contractor that can handle it, versus me saying, well, I can make X amount of money, so I'm just going to tackle this. Which is what a lot of these guys do. They think, well, if I can get 10 grand off a job and it only costs me 3 guys and a little bit of work and material, but they don't care of the quality. They're just looking at the number of money they're going to make,
I see people here. One of the things that I kind of notice when people are getting ready to sell real estate and they have projects going, or people just call because they're in a nightmare and they don't know what to do, is contractors will take a deposit and they kind of think it's a job they can take on that they really can't. I mean, there was a couple years ago.
They get over their head.
Well, I don't know if it kind of seems like it might be planned, to be honest with you. They get that 50%, they tear it all out. So you've already invested so much money, and then they scoot out of town on you. I mean, that was one we saw with the roofer a couple of years ago.
Or they want to change the price. They know they've already got it destroyed, and they're like, well, it's going to cost a little more now.
Yeah. And like you said, telling someone before you tear open a wall. Now, I will say, obviously, there's things that you cannot know. There's things you find that you don't know are there. And I know, like, for TV, there's really the drama. We actually had an opportunity a couple of years ago. Some production company contacted us about potentially doing one of those renovation shows, and they came and did a little snippet for DIY Network and stuff. And they're like, your town's too small. We can't get, the supplies we need and stuff like that. We're like, we told you that from the beginning. They said, we prefer mid-level sized towns like Tennessee. And I'm like, that's a huge city. Like,
that's not a little town. Yeah.
But that was what they considered mid-size. But of course, so much of it's the drama. So I know a lot of that is fake and created on those shows. But when you see they're like, oh, we opened this wall and now we know it's going to be $5,000 to $10,000 more than you thought it would. I always tell people, okay, if we open the wall and we find this, if we open the wall and we find this, if we open the wall and we find this. Now, sometimes there's things you couldn't have thought of, but you try to say, like, worst case scenario, this floor feels a little weird. We're probably replacing subfloor, but until we tear it up, we don't know for sure. Here's how much more it's going to cost. Do you want to do this? So you try to eliminate as many of those surprises as you can.
You have to. Yeah.
Every business should be that way. I do that in real estate too. And I think it scares people sometimes, but when you start a deal, okay, well, if this happens, because people, I mean, you don't do a transaction, you don't do a renovation that many times in your life. So it's good to know worst case scenario, what could happen. And I think sometimes that scares people away, but I'd rather people know from the beginning than be mad at me in the middle and the end because I didn't prepare them as well as possible.
Yeah. And it's the same here. I have clients, I literally in 6 years, just being here in Tulsa, I have clients that will not call anyone else. And like last year I had surgery on my elbow and on my left arm. And I was out for about it ended up being about 5 months. And I literally told all of my clients, hey, we're not going to be taking on any new work. We're not going to be doing anything until I'm healed, until I can be back in the field again. Yeah. And every one of them said, some of them had some emergency projects they had to do. And they were like, look, is there a contractor you trust? And I'm like, yeah. And I started referring out to the ones that I personally use at my house, like ones that me and my wife will call and let them work at our house that we know. Ones I trust, ones I know that they're not asking for money up front because they'll do the job and they know they'll be paid at the end. Stuff like that. So I started doing that. I was like, yeah, if you guys have an emergency project on one of your rentals, we can go ahead and just send over so-and-so. Well, they would call me back and they're like, I appreciate the referral. That guy was awesome. His numbers were just about where yours were. We know, but we're going to go ahead and hold that project until you're done and healed up. Yeah. And I was at a point like 4 months after that post-op surgery. I told my wife, I said, as I get older, I'm really not going to be able to just get out here and keep doing this like I am, keeping up with these youngsters. I said, I'm just going to have to just take it and we've kind of reassessed, like, should we close the company? Should we pivot to sell off and do something else? So we were trying to make all these big decisions at the end of the year last year. And I tried, like, I was like, I'm going to get out now. We're going to sell the company. Let's just make that a plan. And I had a couple clients call me and they're like, Dean, listen, absolutely. We will pay you. We will hire you to be our guy. And we will just start a whole nother LLC just for you to run and it will pay you. Like, they refuse to let me off the hook for construction because they know what they get with me. They know that the job gets done. They know if there's a problem, it's never like most people, when it's a big problem, it's the end of the world. Or like you said, they'll walk off a job. When I get challenges like that, I tackle them. And most of my clients have worked with me on projects that we've been through that process together. And they know, like, I'm not one ever to back down. If it's the biggest headache, nightmare on a job ever, I will stand there with them till the end. And so I got a lot of clients that they will not call anyone else. They just refuse. And I love that. And I'm thankful that I have those type of clients. But like you said, there's some clients there's sometimes I see potential clients come in, I'll go to an estimate and I'm like, we're not a fit. We're not going to click. Right. And it's not about, I can't do the work, and it's not about they're bad people. It's about, you just can tell when somebody and you just don't align. At the end of the day, no matter how good you do, you're not going to impress this person. Their expectations are going to be way higher no matter what you do. Yeah. And so there's jobs where I'll turn them down because it's just in the best interest of my company. Like I said, we've never not been paid. We've never had a lawsuit. We've never been sued. We've never had a client come back and say any of our work was faulty. I've never had bad reviews. The reviews we get are sometimes we get competitors who will do fake reviews on Google. Yes. I get those a lot and I'm like, whatever, and a lot of people are like, dude, Google will ruin a business. I don't care. The reviews don't matter to me because I have enough clientele that knows me that even if I turn off all Google and all platforms and all websites, I will have work till the end of my life. It's just one of those things. I always know I'm fine without a review. And that's what I kind of tell a lot of my clients are like, well, I was looking at your reviews and I'm like, you can look at them and you can follow through with the anonymous account that was set up for that. Yeah. And it's pretty simple to see, like, this is just a competitor trying to run us out. It's crazy that that's like the world we live in though. Yeah.
Or so I think some people just get bored. Like I'm a stressor, so I don't have that. I'm working on having that mindset a little bit better. Yeah. But I think I told this story in one of my podcast episodes, but I remember when I started, there was an agent that she's awesome. I mean, I like to work with her. She's a huge producer. And the only review for it was a huge brokerage, was about how bad she was. And I don't know if that was because sometimes people have a bad experience and it's not based on reality. Like,
it's more emotional. They base it on how they felt.
Or people don't understand, like, especially in real estate. I mean, for example, say I'm working with a buyer and the buyer's lender pre-approves them, and then the buyer's lender maybe shouldn't have pre-approved them, and halfway through the deal it all falls apart and they're really upset. They're mad at everybody. Right. Some people don't have the emotional intelligence to separate or to understand even when they know, like, this person's role was this. I have nothing to do with the lending process. Yeah. But, so I don't know why her review was negative, but after getting to know her, she's very good at what she does.
Right.
So it's funny to me though, and I always try to remind myself and the agents that work in my office that are so nervous about that she is an amazing producer. She makes a ton of money. She's good at her job, and it's gone now. Somehow it was there years ago.
Yeah.
But the only review for her and for that business was negative, and it didn't impact her in any way, So people that know you, people that have worked with you and do a good job, people whose mom used you, people whose sister used you, they're still going to use you, and, do the best you can, but don't let it drive you nuts. I think we have like 2 negative reviews. One is from someone who I went back through all our files. We've never done any business with them. And our search engine optimization guy was like, well, sometimes there's bots too. So like you said, it might be a fake name and a fake person, but it also could be like, it just said not real impressed. And I messaged and I put my cell phone and I said, hey, we checked our records. We've never worked with you in any sort of way. Please give me a call. And of course, nothing. And I just had to let it roll off, and then we do property management. So that's a whole different world. We had a lady break a lease when we first started doing property management. She lived in the house for like a month and a half. And then she said she moved out in the beginning, broke a year-long lease, of course, threatened to sue. She said her whole family almost died in the house because I
love the exaggerations.
Oh, but get this. So I was worried about the review. She was going to sue us, yada, yada, yada. We just referred her to our attorney, said, stop contacting us, because she'd come in the office like cussing at us and screaming at us. And I like it when people go, I'm working on several lawsuits right now, so I'm just referring this to my attorney. But she has a horrendous review on there that's still there. Well, a couple months later, she went into our local pet. I can't remember if it was a Petco or PetSmart. I can never remember what we had. Got her dogs back, almost beat her dogs to death. And then she left she was trying to get a lawsuit out of this pet store chain and said that they had left her dogs in that condition. Well, what happened was they had all the video footage of her leaving the store with her dogs perfectly fine. So she literally had almost beaten her dogs to death because she was trying to.
It's a lady who's just one of those people that just goes around suing everybody.
Yes. There's nothing you can do. There's people like that in this world, and you can only control what you can control. And you can only do the best you can do. And so I think some people, like my husband, could care less. He doesn't worry about that stuff. I will stay up all night stressing about it. And
my wife's the same way. My wife she gets very anxious. She gets worried about stuff like that. And I let it roll off my back. I've been through a lot in my life. So it's like, I don't really stress over a lot because I've been through so much. And
like real things.
I mean, I've faced things in my life that were just very like life ending. And so it's like, for me, it's like the little things with business and stuff is like, whatever. I mean, it sucks. I don't ever want to disappoint a client or potential customer. I don't ever try to. But I'm also never going to engage at the level that they want to argue, and I'm never going to engage them in the way they're going to engage me. That's just not professional. And I try to be that way. Now, there's been times where I've told my wife, like, I told this client's X, Y, Z, and I probably shouldn't have, but I did because they kind of got a little across the line. And my wife's like, please watch it, because she knows like I won't take crap from anybody. And so it's one of those, she's like, please just don't do anything dumb, and it's like, I won't, but I'm also not going to let them voice things that are not true. I'm not going to let them do things to impact our company that is not verifiable.
Right.
And so we, just being professional about it, but at the same time, it's not easy, as it's not easy being a business owner. You got to be stern sometimes. There's decisions that have to be made. You can't be a pushover owner. I've said that for years. You can't be somebody who's going to just cater to the customer's always right. It used to always be the customer was always right. That's what we all grew up thinking and knowing. We're not in a society like that anymore. We're in a society where the customer isn't always right. At times, you have to protect your interest, your investment, and your business.
And you can't throw yourself on a sword. That's what I always tell them, like for somebody who it doesn't deserve it. And you have to know your value. There's times, like you said, where it's better to walk away. There's clients that you don't want to take on once you talk to them, and you can do it politely, but there's business that is not going to be beneficial for you to take on. You have to walk away sometimes. I look back to when I was doing more construction, and I literally would lose money on jobs because you open it up, you find something that I didn't have the balls, because I am a pushover, and I'm getting better as I get older and working really hard on it. I would find something and I would tell them, hey, we found this, whatever. And I'm like, oh, I'll just eat it. And I would literally at the end of the day, not even just be coming out even, I would lose money
Yeah.
to renovate someone's bathroom because I felt so bad to charge them more because of something we found, that I was walking away after a month-long job having lost money because I put my own money into it. And I was like, I can't live this way. Like I can't, and so you have to know your value. These people in any industry that are undercutting a market, that are undercharging, or they're not saying, okay, now this came up, so this is what you can we have to pivot. Know your value, because you're going to drive yourself nuts if you do that.
Yeah, and we started, we mark materials up now. We tell most of our good clients, our long-term clients, that if they purchase material, it's on site. Obviously we just charge labor on that. But for the longest time, for probably the first 2 years of Time Warp, I didn't charge any upcharge on material at all. I was probably the only contractor in town that would literally go pick up material, take it to a job, do the job, and there was no 15 to 25% markup on material. I just did that. And a lot of guys could not figure out how I was getting so much work. They could not figure out, like, why are these people just call this guy back? What is the deal? Yeah, he's doing good work, but man, why is everybody going to his company? And it literally, that was a big part of it. But then when we did start charging, our clients understood. Our clients were like, dude, you've done this much work for us. We've never had any issues. We continue to have a good relationship with you. Please mark up the material. Please take your time. And if you got to pick it up, add a fee on. If you've got to go do things, we understand. And we in the beginning, we understood that you didn't do that, which was a cool selling point. But at the end of the day, we know you got to make money, and you make us money. So please make yourself money. And it became a point where it was a dialogue where a lot of my clients were just like, we want you to make money. Like, you, as long as you're getting our jobs done, we want you to make money on us. And I was like, well, that's a great relationship. You always want to have a client say that, and I was like, so that works out really well. But then there's some that are like, hey, you never charged before. Why are we charging now? And those discussions sometimes get hard because it's, sometimes you're dealing with clients that are very frugal, they're penny pinchers. And it's like, you can go find somebody else. You've been a long-term client of mine, and I love you and I want to keep working with you. But if you can't adjust to the markup that we're having to charge now, you can go find another client or contractor to do this work. And almost every time some of them will, but they come right back. They're like, well, we worked with this guy. It was a disaster. We're back. And
not everybody is your client. That's the thing I think to remember in any business too. People try to make everybody happy, and you will just go crazy. And so we see that a lot in real estate. We see a lot of people that severely discount their services, but then I think they're pissed off that they charge so low, so they do a horrendous job. That's a conversation you have. So people will say, well, this agent said they'll do it for this. And I do video photography, aerial photography. I put money into advertising.
You're offering more services to make it. Yeah.
And I'm also going to answer your phone call all the time. If I'm with a client with it, I'll call you back as soon as I can. You're getting a service that you're not getting from them at what they're charging. And it's negotiable. You can't price fix. So everyone can charge what they want to, but you find that people go with this person, and some agents, all they'll do is they'll take your listing, they'll put it on the multiple listing service, so our database, so it feeds onto the internet data exchange and all that, and that's all they do. They don't do open houses, they don't do any advertising. They're literally doing nothing. I have agents who I can't even, clients give up on their houses, like buyers, to even see them because the agent won't respond so many times, or it's the weekend, so they don't answer their phone. It's after 6 p.m. they don't answer their phone. You get what you pay for. So people will say, okay, this agent, and I'm not going to say, well, do you know they only do this? I'm just going to say, here's what I provide, and here's what I charge for it. And they go, well, will you match them? No, because I'm not going to drop my service to that level, because then you're not going to be happy and it's going to hurt my reputation. So you can pay what I charge, or you can go to a discount agent. And some people go to the discount agents, and some people go, no, we're going to stick with you. Or like you said, I've had people list it with that agent, and once it expires, their listing,
they're coming right back.
And say, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I didn't list with you. I regret it. Here was my experience. And then it's back to, some of them just say they'll pay it, and then they'll say, will you match it? No, I won't, because I provide the things they want. And I see all these agents, and I have these conversations with the agents in my office, and they're cutting their prices down to try to get every deal. And I'm like, why? You are providing all these things that my office pays to provide. So you need to charge this, because I'm not charging you. We do in-house photography for all of our agents. That's something that with our brokerage, my husband, who's a real estate photographer, he does that for all of our agents. So that's something is a benefit of working in our office that our agents get. So that cost doesn't have to, but we're providing that for you.
Yeah, so that's a service you're providing that they don't have to have as a third party, or you as a broker doesn't have to call another person that's outside of your office. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you this, in our town, when we first started doing this, if you look at real estate in any big city, it's all professional photography. Any house over a certain price point, you're going to have video. If you have any sort of land, you're going to have drone photography. It's the standard. I have an agent that just moved here from Tucson, and she did real estate there and then got her license in Wyoming when she moved here. And she was appalled by the customer service of contractors, because she's buying a house now. She just bought it.
She was probably like, what is this?
She was like, you got to be kidding me. They'd be out of business because there's so much competition. That's the problem. There's not here with contractors. And then real estate agents are taking pictures with their cell phone. I kid you not. There are pictures of houses in our MLS through a car window where you can see their car. You can see the car window isn't rolled down. Pictures of backyards through screens. So the screen is in the picture.
Is showing.
Yeah, so it just looks like blurry. Sides, at least turn your phone this way and edit it. There's apps. They're taking pictures this direction, so it's a tall, skinny.
It's all a little picture.
Yes. And these are,
it's like somebody handing the phone to my 12-year-old son and saying, hey, we're going to go take pictures today.
And here 300 and up is an expensive house. I'm seeing this on $350,000 houses, or I'm seeing $500,000 houses, one picture or no pictures.
Right.
And as a client,
front door and yard. Front door and yard.
I would fire you. And I don't know if people don't know what their rights are. I don't know if they're not getting online and seeing what their agents have produced.
That's horrible.
I'm appalled. So when I started, my husband was like, well, let's start doing all this photography stuff. He wanted to learn, and we started doing it. He is literally the only real estate photographer in our town. He'll do it for our office for free, and he'll charge agents out of office. But it's like, there's so many people that aren't using that, and they have the worst. Like I said, you can edit. There's some good apps if you're going to do it yourself, but the level of effort, I'm just appalled by that people are continuing to give business to these agents.
Right. Yeah. And it amazes me. Like, I did property management and I did property maintenance when I was way younger, 20s. And my sister she's done property management since she was in her teens. And she literally is now realtor in 3 or 4 different states. She's in Florida now, but my sister, she's been in real estate forever. My other sister, she's like real estate broker, and she does mortgage loan and stuff like that. But I just remember when it was like, when she was first started out in real estate and stuff, real estate agents had such a big case, like a load of stuff they had to do, like, because they did have to take their own pictures, that when they listed a property, they did have to do all that, and they could source it out to a photographer or do it themselves. And back in, like, I'm thinking the 90s, back in the 90s, pictures looked horrible. Yeah. You did have somebody take a picture of the curb, take a picture in the door at the foyer, take a picture of each room, and then the backyard. And then that was it. And they posted it. And then now, like you said, you have drone photography, you have so many better and apps and editing software. You have so many better ways to take pictures of a house and actually present it, or virtual tours. It makes zero sense to try to sell, especially like you said, at a certain price point. I'm not going to go sell my $1 million house and have my realtor walk through there with their phone taking pictures. I want it to be listed professionally. I want my house to sell at top dollar. And in order to do that, you really need good pictures.
Well, and like you said, they used to take a few pictures, but also you used to have to go to the real estate brokerage office and they had a book. These are the listings we have before everything was on the internet. Your agent had, and you kind of just had to go see them.
Yeah.
So the photography was not what it was when we didn't have all this online stuff we have now.
Yeah.
People start their searches online, and the people that don't start their searches online are at least looking at houses. And that first impression now is a photography first impression.
Yeah.
And so you have to control that and make it good. Like, I've had people where I'm like, just go see the house because I think you're really going to like it. And they're like, oh, based on those pictures, like, it looks horrible. I'm like, yeah, but and then they love it. But that
you can't tell by pictures either.
Yeah, but if you, I mean, it's just crazy. And so it matters now because people are starting online, and that your first impression is not when you walk in the front door, it's when you look at
Mm-hmm.
those pictures. And some people will not even look at it because the pictures are so bad. So you're really doing your clients a disservice. And like I said, you don't have to have some towns that are tiny, tiny. You don't have a professional photographer option, but at least turn your phone sideways and get an editing app
A
so it
good
doesn't look like
landscape
it's
picture,
black.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it cracks me up. My wife, she is all over, like she looks at everything, any properties. She's always looking for property. We're always talking about when my son graduates, we'll head back to Florida, get a place on the beach. And so she's always looking. She's always like, look at this property, look at this property. And then she'll go through the pictures, and it's always like you said, it's just, she's always like, well, looking at the pictures, it's not. And I'm like, you can't just base it on the pictures. You've got to walk through that house and really know what it is.
Yeah.
Because if you're buying it, especially if it's something I'm going to live in, not just an investment, but if I'm going to live in it, I want to know what the feel of walking in that house is in each room and how it feels. The pictures, as good as they are never going to do justice for the actual walking in a property and knowing it. It just cracks me up.
And now people are doing, on the other side of that, when people are going too far with it, virtual staging. So
Yeah.
virtual staging started with, okay, we're going to put furniture in here so you can see the layout that's not there. We don't have to pay a stager to rent this furniture. But now it's turned into extreme Photoshop. And I think there's going to be some ethics concerns arising with this if you are a member of the National Association of Realtors, because you're really misrepresenting a property. There are people editing like professional, so you can't tell. They're editing fireplaces into pictures.
Yeah.
They're editing like renovations that aren't there.
This is what you could do. Yeah.
They're editing lawns into property, which if you're somewhere where you can see the yard all year, but if you're in a snowy climate and you thought there was grass there because this fake
and
picture,
it's just mud,
it's misrepresentation, and people are going to get in a lot of trouble for that. So it's gone too far, I think, with some people. Like, put a fireplace where there's not a fireplace, but it's getting pretty extreme in some cases and in bigger places as well.
What do you think about let me pick your brain a little bit on what do you think about the, with the new administration coming into office, how do you feel about the real estate market right now? I know a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of different people in real estate, my sister included, and a lot of my local clients. A lot of them are a little unsteady, and a lot of them feel like our market is plateaued and it's at its peak, and that the only thing it can do is kind of come down or crash a little. How do you feel?
I don't know. I think there's things that everyone always, when there's an administration change, they always say, oh, this person did this. There's things that are in the works that are years in the works right now in our market that I don't know if necessarily the administration change is going to have an impact on it. But right now, with interest rates being as low as they are, the economy is up and down, right? That's just how it works. If you take any econ class, any market, that happens. You can't go up forever and you can't go down forever unless you just crash. I mean, we see stocks crash, right? Things die. But things are up and down, and the economy is cyclical. And from talking to appraisers and the things I've seen, in my area, we have what's called a rural development loan. So if you have below a certain population, RD is what I'll probably repeat it and say that for those that don't know. You can do a no money down loan, not a VA loan. It's just no money down if you make less than a certain amount of money. But in our area, it's like $90-something thousand, that's a pretty good income, especially here. We don't have state income tax. So you can make less than like 95,000. They change it every year. I don't know exactly where it is. Do a no money down loan. And so I see people buying houses, like expensive houses with no money down, or FHA loans, 3.5% down, which still isn't a lot. When you do the no money down RD loan, you have a funding fee. And most people, they're doing the no money down loan because they want to keep their cash or they don't have a lot. They fold the funding fee into their loan. Well, in a year, when they call me because they get relocated, I've had people do it in less than a year. They have to move for some reason, or they're getting a divorce and they have to sell their house. They owe more on the house than they bought it for because they did the no money down loan and funded their fees into it. On top of that, if they want, in my market, and big markets are not this way, but in my market, most buyers are expecting sellers to pay their closing costs. So for those that don't know, the closing costs are the expense of financing your loan. So you have to factor in when you list a property, my buyer's going to ask for X amount in closing costs based on my sale price. I'd say always at least $5,000. So it's not a small amount of money if you're already upside down on your house. Plus I have to pay my realtor fees. So people will try to do a FSBO, but then they can't sell their house. FSBO's for sell by owner, for those that don't know what that term is. So they're in a really bad position. So they mark up their price. So they try to get more out of it. Well, here's the problem in our economy, in my market, your price hasn't gone up that much in a year or 6 months that you can ask for like 20 something more, but they're up, they have to, unless they're going to bring money to closing. And so people sit on these houses forever. So here's the new thing to add to that. So that's been happening in our economy forever. And I've had a couple sellers who the conversation is, would you rather have a $350,000 loan or would you rather have like a $15,000 bank loan? It might be better to lose money on your house and just get out.
To have that payment. Have that down payment.
Furnace goes out, if this roof needs replaced, like you still have to deal with all this. If you want to be a landlord, you can rent it, but what are the risks that come along with that? I mean, it just depends what you want to do. So we've seen that in our market a lot. People having to move sooner than they expect. And it's tough because they're upside down on their houses. So that's tough. Now, on top of that, right now, I'm seeing interest rates as low as the lowest one I've seen was like 2.4, I think.
Yeah, interest rates are great right now. They're great.
That's insane. So you got a 2.4 interest rate. You bought a more expensive house than you should because now with the debt to income ratio adjustments with your lender, because your interest rate is so low, you can buy a much more expensive house. We've heard a lot of people say,
it doesn't always mean you should, but you can.
Right, but they are. So get this. So my husband, when he does photography, a lot of times the people are there and why are you selling? What are you doing? You know, he's very good at just communicating with people. And the overwhelming answer he has heard from people in smaller homes, townhouses is, well, interest rates are so good, so we can have the same monthly payment, but a more expensive house. So we're upgrading right now. Instead of just refinancing, getting your payment down, saving some money, they're selling their house and buying something more expensive because their ratios allow them to with where the interest rates are.
Yeah.
The problem I'm seeing with this is, and I'm having this conversation with an appraiser that I'm friends with, and he said the same thing. I don't think we're coming to a bust, but we're going to see a market correction because prices, even nationally, as you look at the statistics, have been eking up. People in big markets like California, big cities, I'm hearing agents saying they're getting 20, 40, 60 offers on houses because there's no inventory and people are waiving their appraisal contingencies and paying the difference. So people are spending like $40,000 above appraisal to get in these houses. Now, if you're going to stay somewhere forever, or if you have other funds, but a lot of my buyers don't, they don't just have money sitting there to get out from under a house if they have to. You just paid way more than this house was worth. On top of that, once interest rates are 4.5% again, because they're going to have to go back up. These lenders are going to have to make their money back from these low rates. People are not going to be able to afford those price points when their interest rates are 2% higher, and they will be. They're not going to stay here forever. And so there's going to be a correction where these people have to sell these houses. Again, if they stay there for 20 years, they'll have the equity, they'll be fine. But you don't expect to get divorced. You don't expect to have to relocate. You don't expect that your job's going to change 6 months after you bought your house. And if the market has changed, which it will, it has to, the economy is cyclical, and your timing is bad, you're going to be in a bad position. You're not going to be able to, people always say, well, I just don't want to lose money. Sometimes you have to lose money if you have to move. And if you don't have the cash to pay your lender off to change ownership, you're going to be stuck. And so I see a market correction coming. The prices we're seeing for houses are not, they don't make sense. And they're not going to make sense when interest rates are 4.5%. So I think that's been coming regardless of administration change. So what I see is people that were in that position before where they did those no money down loans and they bought high, is they either just sit on their house and leave it vacant because they can pay their monthly payment, but they don't have 20 or 40 or 60 or however upside down they're going to be depending on the market to get out from under it, or they rent it. The problem with renting it is I love rental property. It's a great investment, but you have to have a stomach for it. And if you're already tight, these are the people that when repairs come up that aren't necessary, like, if you're
not escrowing money in for repairs out of your payments, you're hurting.
Or they don't have it because maybe they're renting it for less than what their mortgage was because they bought really high and that the market doesn't allow that. And so they're losing money. So they're not setting aside profit every month. So like my rentals, almost every time I have a tenant move out, I repaint them. I paint everything the same neutral color so I can just go touch up, but everything's pure fresh. Every hole is patched. They don't have the money to do that because they're out of state. So they're paying for labor too. So their property declines and declines and declines because when we say, hey, you should do this, this, and this, they don't. So their value is dropping every time they have a turnover. So this is already happening. So when the prices are already way higher and they're getting worse, this is what we're going to see. Now, on top of that, what I'm concerned about now, and this was already happening through 2021, and I've heard, I'm guessing with being with Biden and kind of the things I'm seeing, that this is going to extend. 2020, you couldn't evict. They were giving.
Correct. I was just going to ask you that. I was just going to get into that. Is I see, that's what I'm hearing a lot from a lot of my clients here in Tulsa. They still have the same thing where you can't evict somebody, but the bank wants their money.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of clients with a lot of properties, and they're like, we are still paying mortgages and we are getting no income.
And they're destroying your property too.
Yes.
So I was talking to my neighbor the other day about this, because I said, we have people that are investors that we manage property for, that they have one rental because they bought really high.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't afford to sell it for what they owed on it. Their monthly rent is less than what their monthly mortgage is, because they bought at the top of the bubble in 2008. So their payments were really high. Their mortgage is maybe $1,800 a month, and they're renting it for $1,500 a month. And that's just all they can do. And so they're losing money anyway, but if their tenant stops paying, they're going to lose their house.
Yeah.
And my neighbor goes, they thought that everyone just had rental properties, just hadn't paid off. And that it's all profit. And so these are people that are already in a really bad spot, doing the best they can in a bad situation. And what's going to happen is they can't kick their renter out, but eventually because you can't foreclose, I'll get to foreclosures too. But once it forecloses, that renter is going to get kicked out anyway.
Yeah.
So like, people don't think, like, landlords are not just rolling in dough. Some of these people are people in bad situations and just got stuck and would have sold these houses any day if they could. They just can't. I have rental properties. My rental properties have mortgages on them. I'm cash flowing. I have other businesses, so I could pay them if my renters don't pay. But it's not my job to give someone a free house because they don't want to pay their rent. Here's the other frustrating thing is people keep saying like, oh, well, we can't pay because we're waiting on our stimulus check. But you have like a garbage can with a box from a 70-inch flat screen TV in it. Like, you're paying for some things. You're just choosing what you're going to pay.
What you want to pay for.
Now they're using it as an excuse. And so that's really sad, because you can't really evict right now. So people are taking advantage that could pay that are choosing not to because they're being enabled. Now, on top of that, talking to some of the foreclosure companies, they weren't allowed to foreclose in 2020. So they have so all the investors that are like, why are there no properties to invest in? That's why there's been a dry spell. Now, I talked to one at the end of the year, and she said at the end of 2020, and she said now they're going to be allowed to foreclose on vacant properties. So if someone hasn't paid and they said, hey, you need to go, you're not paying, and they've left, they can start the process so they can sell these homes. Meanwhile, somewhere like Wyoming, the property value is declining because the pipes are freezing, they're bursting, you have water damage. But if people are still squatting in the properties, they can't foreclose on them. So still now, if someone wasn't paying all through 2020, they can't do anything. So it's hurting us on two sides. It's hurting people who are rental owners who, again, they're not rolling in dough. Like, I have a little bit of profit every month on my properties, but there's people that don't even have that. And if you stop paying rent, it's not just like, oh, that's all profit. No, that's not the position for most property owners.
Rental properties, I've never looked at it. Even I have a client here that, let's put it this way. He owns probably 25 homes across Tulsa. He's bought them years and years and years ago. This is an older gentleman. He's got all of them are paid off. Yeah. He still has to pull loans. He still has to pull notes on those houses to keep them going. He owns them outright. He's got the tickets to them, but he always has to pull money when there's repairs to do. And he's like, he works with property management teams that try to maintain some of them, and he tries to do some. So what he started doing is selling off a house a year. So he'll call me once a year, and he's like, look, I've got this house. I've had it forever in my portfolio, and Dean, let's get it fixed up and get it to market. I need the money. And once a year he'll sell a house, and he's been sick. He's an elderly man. He's been sick. So he's just like wanting to spend time with his grandkids in his last days. And so he's like, we sell a house a year. I get to spend money and have fun with my kids and my grandkids. And I'll call you next year and we'll make some more money. And that's what he does every year.
Yeah. So I think that we're going to see that was already starting last year, but unless they start saying, you're responsible for what you agree to. If you say you're going to pay it, you need to pay it, because when you don't pay your rent, I still have to pay my mortgage. I have a tenant right now. it's my personal rental, and I don't feel like I'm as strict on my personal ones as I am on
Yeah.
the ones I manage because it's my money and it's not somebody else's.
Mm-hmm.
This is a grown, can I cuss on this
You
podcast?
can. We are
This is a
unfiltered.
grown-ass man.
Uh-huh.
He has a very good job. I know where he works. He works at one of the power plants. They get paid very well. He probably has $100 and some thousand RV parked in the RV parking next to the property. He probably pays his rent 17 days late every month. And every tenant, when I start, I say, if you need a different in juxtaposition, I have
adjust the day. Yeah.
I have another property that's one block over, same type of property that two young, probably 20s girls rent. And they are in jobs that have been impacted by COVID. I mean, bars where you get a lot of tips and stuff like that. And if they're ever behind or something weird happens, it's always like, hey, just so you know, I'm working on this. I'll get it to you in a day. Like there's communication there.
Yeah.
This guy just ignores me. So this guy, like I said, he pays about 17 days late every month, won't respond to me. And I just anticipate it now. But everyone that moves in, hey, what day do you get paid? You don't have to pay on the 1st. If the 10th is better for you, let's just know what we all can expect and let's pick a different day. I have that conversation with every one of my own personal tenants. So he always pays late. 1 month he just didn't pay. The only time he's ever paid on time is he didn't pay me for a month. And then he sent me a bill for a check for the next month. And I was like, hey, you missed last month, but I got this check. He's like, well, just deposit it. I'm like, I can't because the date on it, you know, like, like, okay, we'll keep that for the next month. So I had that one on time. And I said, you need to pay me for last month. And he finally did. Well, he sends me a notice because we do 30-day notice when someone's moving out, his lease terms up. He sends me a notice. The letter is dated December 27th, but the postmark date is January 12th. So he is always sneaky and trying to do something. And I get it like the 15th. And so the law is the postmark date is for notices for things dropped in the mail. So I send him a text message and I say, hey, just so you know, we got your letter on like the 15th, but it's postmark date the 12th. So we obviously go off of the 12th. So 30 days puts you to February 10th. At this point, he still hasn't paid January rent. So I say, at this point, you're delinquent this much. And so the last notice I gave him, he's like, it was the 19th. So he's 19 days delinquent. So I said, I'm also getting delinquent notices for your water bill because that's a municipal utility here. So you need to pay your water bill. You need to pay your rent for January plus 19 days of, well, they start on the 5th. So in our case, it's 14 days of late fees. Plus for February, you'll owe through the 10th because that would be your 30-day notice from the 12th of January. Just ignores me. He said he was going to be out on the 23rd, which is tomorrow. He's going to try to just not pay.
Last minute, not pay. Yep.
What I would do in the past was I would just let it go. And I'm not going to do that anymore because I know he can pay it and he took advantage. So again, I'll send him a notice when he moves out once I go through and see what all repairs need to be done and cleaning and all that. And I'm going to send him to collections. I'm not doing this anymore. I know he can pay it. When people come to me and say, just an example, again, the one that was one block over, those girls, she had an emergency funeral. She had to go out of town. She's like, I'm trying to figure out how to send this to you in PayPal. I said, just pay it when you get back.
They're struggling a little bit. Yeah.
You've always paid it. Get a hold of me when you get back. It's no problem because she's been reliable. If you work with me, I will always work with you. But this guy that always pays 17 days late has never paid a late fee. We've never charged him. Like, you don't get to just bail out and not pay your last month and a half of rent, buddy. So just do the right thing. And I always work with people if they're honest and upfront with me. But when you try to be skeevy, we're not playing that game anymore.
Exactly. And I just mentioned the other day I was doing a live and I just mentioned on the show to remind people that you've got these investors and these people that own these properties. They a lot of these people, it's what they went all in on. A lot of these people, it's not like people that own businesses. It's not like people that have a lot of money coming in. They literally might even be working a 9-to-5 job and just saved and eventually bought one property as an investment. And you got to remember that these people did that. And so I made a mention on the live that I did that take care of your landlord. Because even if you're in a situation where you're taking advantage of the state offering you to not have to pay rent right now, I made mention that, take care of your landlord. Be respectful, be good, be in communication with your landlord, even if you're in that situation, because know that they have to still pay bills and they're still paying a mortgage. And take care of their property, respect their property. Don't get to a point where you're complacent and you're enabled to the point where you're like, well, I can take advantage of this program that keeps me from paying rent. And therefore, I know at the end of all this, I'll probably have to move or be forced out. So when that happens, I'll just trash the place. I made mention that be respectful, be a decent human being, take care of the property as if it was your own. Know that the person you're renting from that you're not paying rent for is still paying money out. and that person is invested in this. This is an investment for them. So I encouraged that on the live that I did the other day. And I just, I couldn't express that more to our audience. Like when you hear of people that have rental properties, or you hear people that are in these situations where they're not paying rent because whatever the reason may be. And I understand COVID, pandemic, life goes on. I get that those things are affecting a lot of people and families. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean you just disrespect the place you're living in because of that. It doesn't mean because you don't have to pay rent and then you do have money, you don't use that money to maintain the place you're living in, or whatever it may be. A lot of people, like you said, I know a lot of people that are continuing to work, but they're not paying rent. They're taking advantage of not paying that rent, and they're still, like you said, they're big screen TV. They just put down payment on a new car. And you see them doing it, and it's like priorities. Where are your priorities? Because at some point you're going to have to start paying rent again when it's all lifted up and these programs go away. If you're still able to stay in the place you're at, you're going to be paying rent again. If by any means you're having to pay back rent, you're in real trouble. Mm-hmm. So I always encourage people, with the money you're not having to pay in rent, put it aside, or put half of it aside, so that you're at least saving money in case that changes. And then let's say they don't go on a back pay situation. Let's just say you have to start paying rent. If you're saving money now for when you have to pay rent, you won't be in such a struggle that you're already in. And so I was encouraging people on that when I talked live the other day. I mean, it's just, I don't know, I've reached a point in my life, I'm 45 years old, I'm half dead, just an old person, So it's one of those, like, in my experience, in all the houses I've owned and all the places I've lived, I've always prioritized. Me and my wife had a discussion yesterday about, like, people not prioritizing, like, even food. Like, people are like, well, I'm out of food and I don't know what's going on and it's a pandemic and I lost my job. And it's like, at what point did you prioritize your cigarettes or your beer or some other lifestyle that you do, going to the bar on weekends or whatever it may be? How did you prioritize that above having food in your pantry? How did you prioritize that? The discussion came up because it was a friend of ours who was literally messaging me for female hygiene stuff. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, the store closes in 10 minutes and I need someone to wire me some money. And I looked over at my wife and I said, babe, 10 minutes to the store closing. If you needed female hygiene things, you would know it, right? And she's like, yeah. And I mean, we just had this discussion. I felt bad because I was like, I love the person, I care about him, but man, this is a hard thing to have to tell somebody. You're an adult and you didn't prioritize to have your female hygiene stuff ready, and you waited till 10 minutes before the store is closing to contact somebody to get money because you don't have money.
Here's the deal. Ultimately,
I'm like, mind blown. I'm like, I as a man, I don't have to deal with those things, but as a man, I do prioritize eating. I do prioritize things that I would need throughout my life. I've done that. If I needed gas to get to work, and I worked for minimum wage when I was younger, I always put aside whatever my budget was for gas to get to work and home each week. I did that. I prioritized. And then I'd put aside the money for food. And I'm like, do people not do this anymore? Do people not prioritize things anymore?
We live in a culture of entitlement, unfortunately, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I don't understand. I mean, I see the things happening in our world that are creating that. But one, we live in a culture of entitlement, and two, people make really bad decisions. So we've had renters, same thing, who they're saying they can't pay their rent because of COVID, but you just bought like a new fixer upper car because you like working on cars. Like, you have to make decisions and you're responsible for yourself. And yes, I think we should help each other, but I will help people that are helping themselves.
Correct.
I'm always going to help somebody who is trying to better themselves, but I never expected anyone to help me. And I grew up, I didn't have a lot. My parents always worked hard and did the best they can. But I remember times in college where I was like, if I don't get to go home and work on the weekend, because I travel home and work on the weekend,
you're not going to have any money.
I don't have money for food. Like, I had money for rent, but I have to make sure I drive 3 hours to go home to work come home Friday night, work Saturday, Sunday, drive home Monday morning back to Laramie to do my college classes. Like, I have been there. I get it. I remember when I was a kid, my dad went to college when I was an adult, sleeping in a family dorm in bunk beds. We lived in an apartment where I couldn't play outside because the guy in the apartments across the street was selling drugs out of his window in the alley, and they've torn all that down now. Like, I know what it's like to struggle, but I did everything I can to never do that. I busted my ass. I worked a ton of jobs I didn't want to work. So I don't have sympathy for people who aren't doing the stuff they need to do to take care of themselves. If you're working hard and you're struggling, I will help you hands down.
Right.
But all these people wanting a free handout for nothing and they don't have a job, No, I'm not going to do it. And my dad, I remember when I was a kid saying, I will never have a mortgage that I can't pay if I lose my job and have to work at McDonald's. I need to make sure that I can pay my bills on minimum wage. So that's something we've always done. And maybe you buy a bigger house, but you put a big enough down payment where if shit hits the fan, you can pay the stuff you need to pay. But I have lived through that. My husband has lived through that, grew up, struggled, had to work as a teenager to pay his mom's rent. I mean, we have worked so hard. I will help you if you're working hard. But I don't like this entitlement where it's someone else's job to take care of me. It's someone else's job to help me. It's not. It's only your job.
I started a habit. This was probably about, I want to say probably 4 years ago. Well, more than that. It's probably about 5 years ago I started doing this. And I just started paying my bills 3 months in advance.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything. I pay everything. And that way I'm 3 months in advance. So if something happens to me on the job, something happens to my wife. And last year and the year before, my wife had a lot of medical issues. So she did end up out of work. And so it becomes a thing where we just pay our bills 3 months in advance. And then if should both of us be down at any given time, that gives us 3 months to make a decision on what the emergency situation we need to do to get our finances back on track. And so it's just a habit we started. So a lot of people are like, well, I can't, I've talked to people about it. And they're like, I can't afford to go 3 months in advance. I don't have the money to pay that far ahead. You'd be surprised if you just, if your utility bills are $80 a month for gas, electric, whatever it may be, you'd be surprised if you just paid 30 or 40 ahead and just start building that credit up each time you pay it. By the end of a year, you are ahead a couple months. It just automatically starts adding up into a credit. And I started doing that. We were laughing one time because I paid when I first moved here and we got our first place together. I paid the trash. I didn't know it was $14 a month. I thought it was $14 a week.
Okay.
And so I just went ahead and paid, I kept paying a month ahead. And then finally I was like, screw it. This is such a small payment. I'll just pay it way ahead. The next thing I knew, I had a $400 credit with the garbage company. And the guy was like, at one point they called me and they go, we just want to let you know you can stop paying because it's kind of messing up our books because you're like $400 ahead, which means that you're good for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's cool. That's pretty cool. And she's like, do you want me to mail you a check back or do you just want to leave it where it is as a credit? I go, leave it as a credit. We moved 2 more times and then bought this house and lived here for over 2 years before they called me and were like, well, we got to start charging you again.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so cool. I just paid the garbage for 4 years. But it's just little habits like that I started getting into. Pay 3 months in advance. If you can't pay 3 months in advance on bills, that gives you that emergency cushion. Pay just a little extra on every bill, just so that way you do have a credit. Some companies won't let you do that, but most of them will. I just encourage people to do that all the time, and I do it. And when the pandemic hit, when we started to slow down and I had surgery, that benefited us. My wife was going through medical issues. She was out of work and I slowed down to have the surgery. Our bills were paid. Boom. We didn't have to worry about the mortgage. We didn't have to worry about our insurance. We didn't have to worry about any bills. And it made it so much easier for me to sit back and heal post-op. It gave her time to recoup for her situation. It's just, just a good habit. It's just, I hate to say adulting, but at some point you can be an adult and just live paycheck to paycheck. But I always tell people from my experience, that is the worst way you could ever live. That is the most stressful and anxious way you could ever live, when you can just form a good habit of prioritizing your adult stuff. And then you can still have time for fun. You can still go to the bar. You can still go drink your wine. You can go to whatever it is that you do. You still have time and money for that if you prioritize the other things as number one.
I think you just have to make decisions. What do you want for your life and what do you want in this moment? And I think the one that always stands out to me that was the best decision I ever made starting out in my adult life was, I remember when I was graduating from college and everyone was kind of graduating. I was a couple years behind everyone because I did a master's degree. So everyone else, they kind of got careers going sooner. And people were buying, again, top of what they could buy. I wasn't even in real estate. Real estate wasn't, I was investing in it and I did rentals.
Living above their means.
Yes. But I wasn't in real estate sales. And I saw all these people buying houses that I would have loved to have. Beautiful, beautiful houses at twice what I bought my first rental property for. And so I bought an investment property, like a little townhouse, and these people are buying really nice homes. I'm like, oh, those are so nice. I will have that one day.
Yeah.
But I still now can't even imagine buying a house that doesn't make me money. So I
Right.
bought townhouse investment properties.
Yep.
We bought a triplex that had a house in the front and a house in the back. The back house has 2 apartments. The 2 apartments in the back pay above my mortgage for my front house. So again, that's more money I can save and invest. And again, I look at houses and I go look at these beautiful houses that my clients, and a lot of clients are peers and people I went to school with, because I'm back in the town that I grew up in. And I just think, man, this is a really nice house. It would really be nice to have a heated attached garage that was this big. And I'm like, but no, it's not the time yet,
Right.
And so the sacrifices I'm choosing to make are doing things that are good for me long term,
Yeah.
And it's not that I couldn't go buy a house like that, but it would be stupid because that house wouldn't be making me money,
Right.
It's the same thing. It's as simple as, like you said, the bills. Or do you really want to pay $250 a month for cable, or do you
Yeah.
want to set that money aside? And like a couple $1,000s a year is a bunch to be able to
Yeah.
save if you
It
hate your
is.
life and you need a pivot in your career. And so just think about what you want to do long term and what you can do now to get to those goals, because your time's going to pass anyway, but what can you do to make it better for you? So
Yeah.
I think that's it. People want what they want, but they don't want to make the sacrifices they have to make. Everything's a choice. No one makes decisions for you in your life but you. And
Yeah.
so you can decide to make the sacrifices you need or not, and then you get the consequences of your actions. So it's up to you.
Yeah, and it's important we set goals. It's important, if you're someone like you who's driven, and someone like me who I set goals. I think about the goals. I think about how I'm going to achieve the goals, and that's short term, that's long term. A lot of people, successful people, say write them down so you can see them and visualize them. Put up a board. I have a calendar and a board over here, but a lot of times I'll write it down. I have a really good memory, so a lot of times my board is my mind. I just always just memorize everything. And it's just one of those things, like if you want to achieve something, you have to set that goal. The only way to get to that goal is to work. I don't know any other way. There's no secret way. There's no fast money that's going to get you there. I know friends of mine that growing up that went down bad paths, and they're, I'm going to make a bunch of money selling drugs, and they're in jail. You're going to make a bunch of money doing nothing but sitting in jail. And it's just one of those things. There's no easy way. If you think if there's an easy way to do something, someone tells you there's an easy way to make money, there's an easy way to get rich, there's an easy way. If they're telling you that, they're lying. Or it's just not going to produce the happiness of what you think. And that's usually what I've experienced in all my time dealing with things. And I've seen every pyramid scheme and every kind of crazy scheme there is. Sell this, sell that. You can make all this extra money. I've never done anything that actually succeeded, that actually stayed firm, that was actually a long-term investment that worked, unless I worked my butt off for it. Night and day. Every business I've ever owned, my wife, when we started Time Warp, it was first business she had ever really gotten into. She's younger than me, and she was like, why does it take so much time for you? Why are you spending so much time building this business? Why is it 7, 8 o'clock at night you have a client calling you? Why is it? And I would explain to her, like, especially your first year of starting any new business, you got to work. And that means
more than a year.
Yeah, that means 9 o'clock at night. If a client calls you with some issue or question, you answer the damn phone. You don't just say, I work 9 to 5, and at 5 o'clock, you are no longer somebody I know. You have to invest in your clients and invest in the business that way. And so it's just one of those things, like, you have to work. If you want, you plan a goal, you set a goal, you have to work for it. It's not going to come easy. There's no cheating. There's no figuring out a way to get to your goal a quicker way. There's no quicker way than to just pull up your pants and work toward it. And no matter what that looks like, that can look like long hours. That can look like a lot of struggle. So I've had goals in my life that I've tried to achieve, and they were the most painful, difficult, hard journeys I've ever been through. And at times I was ready to throw in the towel, like, screw this. This isn't going to be the thing for me. It's just not working. I'm done. And then, I'll sit back, reflect, and go, this is part of the journey. This is part of the work that's going to make it worth it.
I think you have to decide what you want, because we see all this stuff, I think, online, and I think it's getting better now about, like, know what your goals are. I think for a couple of years it was like everyone has to hit it hard, and 20 hours a day. And that's not for everybody. And this is what I always say to people wanting to get into real estate is there's agents that sell millions and millions of dollars worth of houses a year. And there's agents that sell 10 houses a year. And it depends what your goals are. Maybe you want a little bit of extra money, but you want to stay home with your kids more. And that's fine. I don't have kids. For me, growing up with not a lot, I don't really want to have stuff. I just want to have money in the bank so I know I have the security. That's my thing. Like, I just want it sitting there. And so for me, I'm willing to work a lot because I want to have that comfort level. But there's other people that are like, you know what? I want to have a really good work-life balance. I'm good making $50,000 a year. Yeah. That's their goal. So that's the first thing is don't set your parameters for yourself off of somebody else's or society's parameters. But once you know what your parameters are, like you said, you have to work. People always come and they're like, hey, I want to get into rental property investing. I want to be a flipper because of everything on TV and everything online. What's the quick and easy way? Well, there isn't one. Nope. I've been doing it since I was in high school. I'm 30 now. I can still tell you this rental that this guy's going to move out of because I work all day in my real estate business because we have the construction, we have the real estate sales, property management, and then we have our own rentals. I do the real estate for other people during the day. So then what I do is at 6 or 7 or 8 at night, then I go over to the rental.
You're going to be over painting and doing maintenance and repairs.
Yeah. Yes. And I still do that. I'm still working when a property becomes vacant or we buy an investment property. I'm still there almost every night until midnight or 2 in the morning because that's my goal. And I know that's what it takes. So there is no quick program you can buy. There is no easy trick. Like you said, if it's easy and quick, it's a scam. They're making money by selling you a program. Yeah. It is just hard work. And I will tell you this, and I'm like, maybe one day I'll release these, like if I just need to motivate, because I work with a lot of new and young investors. I have videos that I have filmed over the years of me when I was renovating my office building several years ago. And I'm sitting there in the middle of the night and I'm just like, oh my God, you know, those charts for investors that they're like, oh, I'm doing good. No, I'm not. Oh, maybe this is okay.
All the different Gantt charts and project management charts. Yeah.
Am I investing? Am I just making the worst decision ever? It's 3 in the morning. I've been working on this place for a year, working all day doing sales and then coming and renovating or I have videos at times in my life that I film just like, is this the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? I feel like I am, but like I'm working hard and I'm not seeing the payoff. You will have those moments and it is hard and you will feel alone and like you are busting your ass and you have it's just you. But it is. If you want it, you're the only one that's going to make it happen. So again, you don't have to have that goal where you're going to work 18 hours a day. But if that is your goal, to have the investment properties and all this type of stuff, like it doesn't just happen. You're going to have to do that for a long time. Like I said, I've been doing this I think we bought our first investment property maybe like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and I'm still doing it. It's never going to stop. I'm still going to be doing that in 10 years.
Yeah. And I encourage the audience to check out your Instagram. And we talked about this a little before the show. I've been following you on your Instagram for probably at least 4 or 5 years now. And I encourage everybody in the audience to go check out Emily Lopez's Instagram and just go through some of these pictures. I mean, I think one of the ones I'm looking for it right now, one of the ones that caught me a while back was, I think it was like a plumbing issue you had or something. It was like a plumbing leak or something. And I think I think it was through a floor or something. I think it was an upstairs or something coming to the downstairs or something. I vaguely remember. But either way, I encourage the audience to just go look at your page. If you're wanting to get into real estate investment and rental properties, go to Emily's page and look at her physically working on these houses and some of the work that goes into these houses. There is no shortcut. It is literally, like she said, working till 12 o'clock at night. It is hard work. And you know, the cool thing that I love, when I've been following you forever, and I what I love is that I've followed your journey just for the past couple of years. And what I've noticed in the past couple of years, me doing construction for 27 years, what I notice is all of your work improvement and all of the things you do, like everything getting better is what I've always followed with you. Every time I see you post something, I'm like, oh, look, they did some tile. And I'm like, oh, damn, they did some really good tile on that one. And so I noticed like the progression of not just the quality of work, but what the things you're learning. And the progression of your investments. And it is very interesting when I'm even just right now scrolling through, there's pictures of you just like hair in a frazzle, work covered in dirt. And it's like, that's it. That's what you got to do. And so I encourage everybody just to check that out. It's really cool to see what you've built, Emily. It's really cool to see that you've you're following your dreams, you're following your goals, but you're not swayed by the nonsense, and you understand that there's a way to get there, and there's only one way, and that's work. It's just, you've got to work to get there. Tell me a little bit about, before we get off here, we've been on here a while, and I don't ever set a time limit for my podcast. Unfortunately, I probably should, but I don't, because sometimes when I get in good conversation with guests, I don't want to just cut it off. But I do want to talk about the podcast. Tell the audience a little bit about what they can expect from your podcast. What are some of the things in the future you're looking at doing? Maybe guests that are coming up. And then maybe also just kind of touch on, what drives you, what drove you into the podcast and getting it set up.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. It kind of started from two directions. First of all, the public doesn't get a lot of information. I think sometimes people in the public in a real estate type transaction, agents are not always honest. Real estate agents don't always have a great reputation. Sometimes people kind of equate them to real estate, or to like car salesmen, I think bad reputations for both. And unfortunately, the things I've heard when people have come to me and worked with someone else in the past are just flat out lies. And so, like, for instance, I had somebody tell me, hey, I've been working with this realtor forever. They told me I had an indefinite agreement with them and I had to list all my properties with them, or I'm breaking the contract. That's illegal. You as a real estate agent cannot do that with somebody. It's one transaction and it's done. So I said, well, either they're trying to mislead you, or they made you sign it's not legal. So it's not a legally binding agreement. Right. And so I would just see things that people were hearing from real estate agents that were not true. So first of all, I wanted to create on YouTube information for the public, frequently asked questions where people, maybe the person they're working with is not super scrupulous. Then I realized when I started in real estate and I got my license, when you get a real estate license, sorry, there's my kitty. When you get a real estate license, you have to work under a real estate broker for 2 years. And most people just work under a broker to hold their license. A lot of people don't want to own their own business, but you can, after 2 years, get your broker's license and start your own business. When I got my license, I, again, being a paranoid, nervous person, thought I'm going to pass my test. And I'm not going to be able to find a broker that will take me on. And then I'm not going to be able to get in real estate and follow my dreams. So I took resumes to several places. The lady I ended up meeting with and working under, she trained me so well. She knew her stuff. What I didn't realize is not every broker does that. So there were other agents that took the class at the same time I did, or around the same time I did, and they started, and they were taking off doing awesome sales wise, but they weren't getting the training and support from their brokers that you should be getting. And so, I mean, you as a broker literally signed that you're going to train them and be vicariously liable for their actions. I mean, they get sued, I'm getting sued because I'm responsible for them. And so I don't think brokers necessarily take that very seriously. So I was super lucky, not even knowing. I just thought everyone would train you and do their job. And so I would have broker or agents come to her when I worked for her and say, hey, I can't get a hold of my broker. Can you help me with this? I want to make sure I'm doing it right. And then when I became the broker and bought the business, same thing. I don't know how to do this. My broker's not training me. Will you help me? So we were helping other agents. And I was like, man, they need a place where they can go get information and get help that they're not getting from their brokerages. So it was twofold. I wanted to give information to the public about real estate, and I wanted to give information to other agents that weren't getting the support that legally they're supposed to have. And so I started the YouTube channel. I wanted to have people on the YouTube channel with me. Noticed people were pretty uncomfortable being on video. A lot of people just were very nervous about that. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to get guests to participate unless it's just voice. So then we thought about, me and my husband, well, a podcast would be a good option. So that's how that started. And I wanted it to be everything. I didn't want it to just be, a lot of it is helpful for real estate agents, but for people that want to invest in real estate, people in the construction business, a lot of small business stuff honestly just crosses over. So, but really, I just wanted anything that had any relation to real estate and would be valuable for investors, buyers, sellers, just anything for a real estate consumer. And people interact with real estate all the time. So you might not buy and sell all the time, but a lot of people have a couple rental properties. You're doing a renovation. Maybe in my town, it's good to know that, hey, licensed and insured means nothing. Maybe you want to get references. So people have all these interactions with real estate and real estate type businesses in their life. all the time. So that's kind of how it started. I'm really just open to anybody that's related to real estate investing. That's not a scam. Like you said, there's a lot of scams. There's a lot of tricks out there. So that's the thing, is I want to find people that are a valuable resource and not, something that's kind of shady. But that's kind of the direction with it, just to be a valuable resource for agents and for members of the public that want that information.
What is your opinion on, since we're touching on the things and some of the stuff that you're going to be offering on the show and stuff like that? What is your opinions on like reverse mortgage type stuff? Are you familiar with any of that? I ask because there's several people in our community here in Tulsa, and I know a couple that own some companies. What is your opinion on that reverse mortgage situation?
I think there's a time and a place for everything. And I think if you are very desperate, it's better than losing everything that you have. The experiences I have seen with reverse mortgages are parents who are deceased or aunts and uncles who are deceased, and now the heirs are trying to unscramble the toxicity that has created and trying to sell a property. So I've not seen the beneficial side of, hey, I need money. I have equity in my house, where someone's using those funds. It's always been like the fallout from it. Mm-hmm. So the people I've seen, it's been very difficult for them. But I think if you're in a position where you're going to do that, you're just trying to hang on till you die, pretty much, as bad as that sounds, and you don't care what you leave behind. And so I had one situation where a guy got a hold of me. He had listed the house with a realtor, felt like she wasn't doing her job. Their contract was expiring. I listed the property. We knew what was going on, and he had a very short amount of time to sell the property. Because there was like a tiny bit of equity, and he wanted that tiny bit of equity so he could pay off the rest of the debt, because the money from the reverse mortgage had already been paid. Yeah. And what happened was that real estate agent came back and said, hey, I have somebody that will buy this house. And I had the listing agreement, and I said, well, I'll cancel it with you. I know you're in a bad situation. Just go with them, redo everything with them if they have somebody. The agent never, and I contacted her. I said, okay, I'm going to make sure he signs this to void it, yada, yada, yada. He never signed it and voided it. She did so she completely violated everything. Oh, no. And so I didn't want to get, because I just wanted this guy to be done. So I didn't report. She did it completely wrong. It was super illegal what she did, but he got out from under the house. It was like his uncle's house. So I didn't really know how it ended up, because I stepped out, because I was like, if you can do it with her, do it with her. But it was a very bad situation. The courts were constantly on him. There was very short timelines after, I think it was the uncle had passed away. It was a very, very bad, very, very stressful situation for the person that was dealing with the estate.
Okay. Yeah. And I've heard the same thing. Like I said, there's a lot of local companies around here. You tend to hear over the course of the past couple of years, I tend to hear that business getting more popular. Like you just hear more about reverse mortgage. And everything I've heard is all nightmare stories. Everything is the house getting taken from them, or them literally getting themselves in a bigger financial bind than they were to begin with.
I would say a better option, depending on what type of payments you have, because you can't refinance if you don't have a certain type of income, but most older people have Social Security. If you could take a home equity, depends on how long you plan to live too. So that's hard, but maybe it's worth, if you have a house with equity in it and it's maybe bigger than you need or more than you need, sell your house and downsize. Mm-hmm. Or take a home equity line of credit, or maybe just finance a property that's paid off. A reverse mortgage sometimes is your only option, but at least do some research first, because a lot of times it's not your only option. They're just who's targeting you. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, it's been great having you on here. Where is some other places, real quick, tell the audience some other places where they can reach out to you. I have pulled up your YouTube, your Instagram. I have the podcast pulled up, as well as the Realtor Broker firm that you run. Go ahead and tell the audience where they can contact you, whether it be for Realty or whether it be for, the podcast and all these others. Go ahead and tell them where they can reach out to you.
Sure. So if you're local, if you're in Rock Springs, Green River, Wyoming, Sweetwater County, we're High Country Realty. Our office line is 307-382-2652. You can always call that number. If you need real estate help that's not related to the state, you just kind of want to, I'm so happy to help anybody. If you want to get into investing, you want, just someone's brain to pick. I have a YouTube channel. You probably have to search like Emily Lopez Realtor, because it's not that big yet, or Emily Lopez Real Estate. There's a million Emily Lopez's on there. You wouldn't think it's a very common name, but apparently it is.
It is.
So we have a YouTube channel. Instagram is at emily.a.lopez. That's kind of just everything that we're doing. So that's just a bunch of stuff. And then podcast is My House Podcast. Same thing. You might have to search for it a little bit because it's pretty new, but it's a red square with a circle and it says My House in cursive. And then, yeah, you can message me on, I try, unless you're a creep, to respond to everything on Instagram.
Yeah.
So you can message me there. You can leave comments on YouTube. Like I have people say, hey, do a video about this. I'm wondering about this. You can message me there. You could go Facebook, Emily Lopez. That's pretty real estate locally specific, but you can message me on Facebook. So there's a lot of ways to get a hold of me if you're, you want to get started in real estate sales or investing or whatever. I'm happy to help because it's easier if someone helps you when you're getting started. So
yeah, for sure. And I will post all the links to these that she just mentioned. I'll post all the links to these in the description when we get this episode up. And that way you and the audience can find these quicker and just kind of, instead of having to scroll through the episode, you can actually find those links. So I'll add those links into our description. Emily, it's been great having you on here. And, like I said earlier, we talked before the show, we always have a guest on here for a first time to let the audience get to know you, get to know what you're about. And then we always encourage them to come back in the future and come on a future episode so that the audience can pick up on where they are and things that have changed in their lives. So we will encourage to have you back in the future, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, maybe we do an update once we know what's going on with evictions and foreclosures and all that type of stuff down the road if that happens.
That would probably be pretty good. I mean, we probably need to. I think I've had one client that's reached out to me and was like, "Hey, can I be on your show as like a regular market update and this and that?" And I'm like, "Sure, we'll talk about it." And I never heard anything back. But I mean, yeah, we could definitely do that. We could reach out even if it was once a month and just do like an update. Like, this is where the market seems to be. This is what's going on. And it looks to be like, as far as we can tell, it looks to be like this administration is going to be making up more regulatory COVID type changes that will affect the market as far as whether you're a renter, whether you're own a house. So we want to keep an eye on that, and we want to keep people informed on what their options and rights are.
I would just say, if you have vacant properties, this is what we've tried to do, and you're placing tenants. I know sometimes you do your background check and you go, oh, this person really doesn't qualify for this place, but I'm going to give them a chance. Don't give anyone a chance if it doesn't look like they can pay. That's what I would say. Yeah. We're just being stricter on who we let in, knowing that it's going to be harder to remove people that aren't paying. So just be very on top of it. What I would like to see is, instead of just giving people money, like if it's rent assistance, you fill out paperwork and it goes directly to your landlord. Because I'm hearing,
yeah, that's how it should be.
Rent assistance, and then they're not paying their rent with that money. And so I would like to see them, if they want to give more, do it responsibly, because people aren't using it where it's supposed to go. I want to say one more thing for people that are real estate agents that I'm noticing happening is, if you are using Zillow heavily, what Zillow has done is
Zillow is kind of weird, is it not? I know you're not the biggest fan, but they are Zillow's very weird.
I think it's a decision, but I just think there's important things for people to know. Zillow has said all along, they don't want to compete. They want to be like realtor.com. Well, Zillow has announced in September of last year, they were in January 2021 they're going to become a real estate brokerage. So they're going to be a direct competitor, which is fine. You're allowed to do that, but they're also still having agents pay to buy leads off of Zillow to be premier agents. Zillow has now opened brokerages. I think it's Atlanta, Phoenix, and Tucson. Those are the three they started in January, and then they're rolling out from there and expanding. So it might be worth talking to somebody. I'm going to try to find someone from there on my podcast to talk to about how it's impacting them. But what I'm seeing on the message boards I'm part of is some agents have gone all in on Zillow. They spend a ton of money on it. Yeah. They put all their sales on there. All their reviews are there. Like, they put all their eggs in that basket. I've had people log in and say they have deleted all my past sales and they have deleted all my reviews. So if you haven't gone and saved those, they're gone. So if that's all you're using and you don't have those reviews saved, I mean, I know people that have hundreds of reviews on there. Like, instead of Google, they're having people put reviews on Zillow. They're deleting them because they're now becoming a direct competitor, especially if you're one of those areas. So I would just recommend, if you're a real estate agent, go take screenshots of all the reviews on there if they haven't already deleted them. Mine aren't gone yet, but I think it's more in those areas. Right. Go take pictures of your reviews. If you want pictures of your past sales, anything that you put in that basket, just make sure you document it, because it could be gone any day. So that's my whole thing, is just make sure that you go get what you need to off of there, because it's gradually being erased.
I think with Zillow, one of the things that me and my wife have found, because like I said, she's always doing research on stuff. And then we've got a bunch of friends that's all they do is research properties and stuff. And What I find with Zillow is it's never accurate. It's never a real accurate. You can't rely on it. And if you do, you're kind of deceiving yourself, because market value is never proper. Some of the pricing that they put on there is never proper. Some of the information is even not good. And so we've found, like, if you find something on Zillow and you're like, oh, look, it's this price and this is what it says, I always go to like 3 or 4 different more reliable sources besides just the MLS. And that way, like what you're really looking at, because I find more than not that they're not up to date on a lot of properties that are listed.
I think that's why they want to be, that's been a complaint for years, especially like 4 years ago. I would call on a property and it would have sold like 4 months ago and it was still on there. So like a client would see it, ask me, I check on the MLS and it was sold, but Zillow hadn't updated. So the reason for that is Zillow, because it's not a brokerage, does not have access to direct internet data exchange. It's called the IDX. They don't have access to that information. That's part of why I think they want to become a brokerage, because then they will. They're going to become members of the National Association of Realtors. They're going to become members of local MLSs. And so they will have the direct data feed that they couldn't have before. So their information will be accurate as long as they don't mess it up somehow in their algorithm, because they will be a direct competing brokerage. They're going to train their agents in-house to be real estate agents. They're going to have employees rather than independent contractors. At least this is what they've said. I mean, it could change. So they're going to have the IDX, so they're going to have the accurate info. That's the plan. The other thing, when I've met with county assessors, because like Wyoming is a non-disclosure state. So when we close and we record a deed, it doesn't say the sales price. It says $10 in valuable consideration. Some states are disclosure states and some aren't. So they have to guess based on tax assessors data, which is also a couple years old by the time it comes out. You have access to it. So they're a couple years behind, especially in non-disclosure states. That will change once they're a brokerage and they have access to the IDS at X, because it's just going to feed from the MLS. But historically, that's why they have been so inaccurate.
Yeah, I think we bought our house at like 135. We have done so much repairs. We've got got a reappraisal. We're sitting at about 200,000 now on our property. We've only had it 5 years, and you can still look on Zillow and our house is listed at 135.
And sometimes they're wrong the other way. People will come and think they're worth way more. And I'm like, that's not like, no way, that's not even right. So I'm interested to see, because now they're buying houses too. They're trying to buy houses from people and then resell them. I think they're going to start saying houses are worth less when they're trying to be the buyer on them. So it's just interesting. It's just something to be aware of. Do what you want to do with it, but go save your reviews if you're an agent, because they're going away.
Yeah. And I think it's and I think you would agree, it's important to tell people that find a professional real estate agent. Do your research. Don't just jump in with Joe Schmo because you're in an emergency and need to sell your house. Seek and do research on who you have doing your listings, who you have as your realtor. It's very important. And again, I encourage the audience to reach out to Emily if you have questions. She obviously has done her homework. She knows the market. She knows real estate. So I encourage anyone in the audience, if you have questions or if you're in her local area, she would be who you'd want to reach out with to answer the questions you have.
And you can shop around. People don't know that. So like, just because you looked until you've signed something, if you meet with somebody, and I've had people meet with me and like you said, you just don't click. Like it's like I try to talk to them, it just doesn't vibe. But you can interview agents to find your agent. You don't have to work with, talk to people, see what they do, look at their other listings online, see what they're providing, what they're not providing. You can do that for an agent. You can also do that for your mortgage broker. You can shop around. Different brokers will offer different rates, different closing cost expenses. Some can pre-approve you for a little bit more because they have different lenders. So don't have everyone pull your credit, because you don't want that, but at least talk to them before you say, pull my credit. Because people feel like they're stuck. Like you don't have to work with someone who's not working for you unless you've signed something for a certain amount of time. But interview everything like that. Interview your contractors. You don't have to pick the first person. And if they are good at their job, they'll be able to present to you what they provide. And that's no problem. It's don't make them feel like don't let them make you feel like they're a bully and you're stuck using someone you're not comfortable with.
Right. And I would agree 100%. That's some really good advice. Emily, it's been great having you on here. I can't wait to get you back on here. We can do some updates in the future on multiple things. Have a good day. I will get this posted up and I'll notify you as soon as we do.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you.